I had been abroad for 5 years, and during that time, everyone believed I was dead. Even my childhood sweetheart, the boy who grew up with me, burned paper offerings for me every year. Yet he was also the one who once told me we should sever all ties, that we must never contact each other again. When I finally returned to my homeland, fate led me to cross paths with him at a bar. Before I could greet him, his bodyguards pinned me to the floor. His expression was chillingly cold. "Who allowed you to take on her face?" he demanded. Then he gave the order, "Ruin her face for me." What? After all these years, had he somehow forgotten the law? The moment I stepped out of the airport, a black shadow rushed toward me. "Maria White. I've missed you so much." It was the voice of my dearest friend, Annie. After years apart, the longing in both of us spilled over. She clung to me tightly, so tightly that after a long while I began to lose my breath. "Annie, that's enough," I laughed softly. "Oh," she said, finally letting go. Her eyes sparkled with tears of joy. "You're not leaving again this time, are you?" I nodded. "No. I'm home for good." Something suddenly struck Annie, and she burst out laughing. "If Paul Wilson sees you, won't he think he's seeing a ghost?" Paul Wilson, my childhood sweetheart, the only person I had ever loved. Before I returned, Annie had roughly filled me in on the events of the past 5 years. Paul Wilson was no longer the boy I remembered. He had advanced swiftly and already secured his position as the head of the Wilson family. As for me, I had spent 5 years abroad, hiding for my life. Surviving had nearly drained every drop of luck I had left. And in all that time, I had not contacted Paul. I looked at Annie. "You didn't tell him I was coming back, did you?" Her smile turned sly. "Of course not. Why should I, when he was the one who was so heartless back then?" Back then, my thoughts drifted far away. At that time, Paul and I were deeply in love. We had promised to marry right after graduation. But then my father fell gravely ill, and I discovered that outside our home there were 2 half-brothers and a half-sister. My father could die at any moment, and in their fight for inheritance, they plotted to eliminate me. A staged car accident left me critically injured. My mother, fearing for my life, sent me abroad with her most trusted confidant for treatment. Before I left, I called Paul to tell him I was going away. I didn't mention the accident, afraid of making him worry. Paul misunderstood, believing I didn't trust him. Over the phone, he demanded again and again, "Why are you leaving?" "I told you, I'll do everything I can to help you. Or do you think I'm not capable enough?" I never doubted Paul's sincerity. But back then, we were still so young and powerless. I couldn't drag him down with me. And truthfully, I wasn't even sure if I would survive. So I steeled myself and said, "My mind is made up." Paul's choked voice trembled in my ear. "Maria White, I'm begging you. Please don't go." I clutched the phone, my heart breaking, and forced out the last words, "Paul, I'm sorry." On the other end, Paul gave a broken laugh. "Maria, this is the first time I've ever begged someone. And it will be the last. From now on, when we meet, we are strangers. Never contact me again." The line went dead. At that moment, I lost consciousness, slipping into a long, dark coma. When I woke up again, 20 days had passed. I was in a foreign land, my wounds mostly healed. The first news I heard was of my supposed death. My Aunt Lily, who had accompanied me overseas, explained, "The day our private jet landed, your father's illegitimate children spread the rumor that you died in a car crash. They wanted to use public opinion to snatch the inheritance quickly. Your mother decided to play along, to make things easier. If they believed you were gone, she could deal with them without distraction. They may have the right to inherit, but they also need to live long enough to claim it. So you must rest here and recover. Leave the matters back home to your mother. She knows how to handle them." I understood the logic, but just imagining my mother fending off those wolves alone left me sleepless. So I pushed myself through recovery every day, eager to return and help her. But my injuries had been severe, especially my face, nearly destroyed. Even with the finest medical team my mother provided, my appearance was no longer the same. Annie recognized me only because we had video called so often. Clutching her arm, I whispered, "Then don't tell anyone. Let the past remain in the past." Annie didn't take me home right away. Instead, she led me to the cemetery in the north of the city. There, she pointed to a gravestone carved with my name and laughed until she could hardly breathe. "Look at this. He claimed he didn't love you, yet he burned paper offerings for 5 years straight. And if he did love you, well, he's been dating Miss Perry from the Perry family. Rumor has it their marriage is near. When it happens, I'll take you to their wedding banquet." I stayed silent, staring at the hyacinths laid before the stone, my favorite flower. Perhaps in the end, the only one truly fooled by this deception was Paul. When he heard of my death, what did he feel? I shook my head, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. He has a new life now. Why am I still dwelling on these things? The Perry family's daughter must be a wonderful girl. On the way back from the cemetery, Annie chattered endlessly. You've been gone 5 years. Don't you think the city's become more glamorous? Even our old school grounds are covered in skyscrapers now. Listen, I've got a list on my phone of all the best food and fun spots, compiled from countless failed attempts. I don't care what you say. Tonight, you're drinking with me. And so, before I even dropped off my luggage, Annie dragged me into a bar. As soon as we sat down, she leaned close with a conspiratorial grin. You've been abstinent for years. Tonight, how about I order 2 male models for you to play with? My first instinct was to refuse, shaking my head like a rattle drum. But Annie pretended not to see. Don't worry. The economy's been rough the past 2 years. Male model quality has gone way up. You'll be satisfied. I was shocked. Clearly she'd had experience with this. When I gave her a look, Annie only shrugged indifferently. Don't look at me like that. Unlike you, I'm not dumb enough to believe in pure love. Since she insisted, I stopped trying to stop her. People really do change over time. 5 years ago, Annie hadn't even had a serious relationship. Now she handled 2 models at once with practiced ease. Afraid she might get drunk and taken advantage of, I kept myself sober. I even rushed my bathroom breaks. But in my haste, as soon as I stepped out of the restroom, I slammed into what felt like a wall of muscle. Rubbing my head, I muttered, whose chest is as hard as a wall? I looked up, and froze. It was Paul. How could this be, such coincidence? He too was stunned when his eyes fell on me. He caught my wrist, uncertainty flashing across his face. Maria. I hadn't intended to acknowledge him. But since he had recognized me, I could only force a smile. Before I could speak, Paul flung me to the ground. His face was ice. Who gave you permission to take on her face? Was it Linda Perry who sent you? Testing me? Do you really think I'm that easy to fool? A glint of bloodlust flashed in his eyes. He turned to his bodyguards. Ruin her face. Pinned by his men, I was stunned beyond belief. How had the boy I knew turned into someone who ignored the law? Whether I was Maria or not, what he was doing was criminal. Why had Paul changed so completely? I couldn't move, my limbs restrained, my jaw clamped tight. A knife gleamed as it drew closer. All the while, I kept my eyes locked on Paul. Just before the blade reached my skin, his eyelids lowered. Forget it. If you dare appear before me again, you won't be so lucky. With that, he and his men strode away. Shaken, I turned my gaze toward a corner. There was a security camera. Without hesitation, I pulled out my phone. I want to report a crime. Someone threatened and tried to harm me. Unsurprisingly, I met Paul again at the police station. Surrounded by bodyguards, he exuded authority, as though he owned the place. Anyone might think he had come to shut it down. The officer in charge wiped the sweat from his brow. Mr. Wilson, this lady was the one who called the police. Paul finally turned to look at me. A flicker of surprise passed through his eyes. Now that we were here, I had nothing to fear from his numbers. I strode up and pointed at him. It was him. He had his bodyguards pin me to the ground out of nowhere. He threatened me with a knife, saying he'd ruin my face. He acted with such practiced ease, this mustn't be the first time he's bullied the weak. This is a society governed by law, officer. You must investigate this thoroughly. He cannot go unpunished. Even as I spoke with indignation, my heart whispered another question: why had Paul changed so much? He had once been such a good person. I had known him for 20 years, ever since primary school. I knew his character. He had never used his family's power to bully anyone. In fact, he worked part-time jobs to support impoverished students. During the worst of my parents' quarrels, when I found solace in feeding stray cats, Paul always accompanied me. When a kitten fell ill, he would carry it to a vet himself and even built them a small shelter. Before I left the country, if anyone had asked me whom I admired most, my answer would have been Paul. Even if we could never be together, I still hoped Paul wouldn't lose his way. But faced with my accusations, he remained utterly calm. His thin lips curved into a self-assured smile. Evidence? Without it, I could countersue you for slander. My heart sank. A bad premonition struck me. Sure enough, when the 2 officers returned after checking the surveillance footage, they shook their heads. That corner camera happened to be broken. We can't verify anything right now. The officer in charge reluctantly returned our documents and IDs, instructing us to wait for updates. But before I could take mine, Paul suddenly pulled my file out of the pile. He studied it for a moment, his brows tightening slightly. You're a white too. Was Paul beginning to doubt my identity? He didn't know that years ago, in order to protect me, my mother had altered my records. The name on the ID wasn't Maria White, it was Daniel White. I smiled lightly. What? Is bearing the name White a crime now? Paul's face darkened. He shoved the file back at me, then walked away without a word. I breathed a secret sigh of relief. Even I couldn't quite explain why I hadn't told him the truth. Yet very soon, I was grateful that I hadn't. Leaving the station, I spotted a girl in a red dress clinging to Paul, her face etched with worry. Annie had once shown me the Perry family heiress's photo. It had to be her, Linda Perry. Paul had even mentioned her name at the bar. Looking at them now, their relationship seemed close. Paul kept his head bowed, listening quietly to Linda. I couldn't see his expression, but I could sense it, his sharp edges softened around her. After a while, the two of them departed together. By the time Annie came to pick me up, it was already deep into the night. You told me not to come too quickly, so I waited until their car was 20 kilometers away before driving over, she explained. But you can't hide forever. One day, the truth will come out. Of course I knew that. Yet the memory of that bouquet of blue hyacinths at my grave left my heart unsettled. What if my return shattered someone else's happiness? Wouldn't that be my sin to bear? You said Paul and Linda are about to marry, right? Then let's wait until after their wedding. Annie hooked her arm through mine, grinning. Ha! Or you could just stay with me. I don't plan on getting married anyway. I teased, and what about your male models? Sent them away already? Annie scoffed. Those were just for fun. You're my one true love, haha. We bantered all the way home. Annie lived alone in a villa, which conveniently became my shelter. That afternoon, I called my mother. She too agreed I should stay at Annie's for now. Over the years, my mother had poured enormous sums into the hospital, managing to keep my father alive. As long as he drew breath, the White family's fortune remained safe. As for his illegitimate children, the twin brothers were too incompetent to be a threat. Only Monica had aligned herself with the Perry family. The Perry family again. Was it mere coincidence? What are you thinking about? Annie tapped my shoulder, snapping me out of my thoughts. She handed me toiletries and headed upstairs. I've prepared a room for you. Take a shower and get some sleep. All right, I replied. But with the jet lag, I couldn't fall asleep. When I checked the time, it was nearly 4 a.m. Giving up, I went to the kitchen and opened the fridge. Thankfully, it was well stocked. During my years abroad, I had learned to cook. Breakfasts, suppers, dishes of every style, I could manage them all. Soon I was rolling dough, chopping fillings, shaping dumplings one by one. I simmered sweet potato porridge, fried golden crullers. Without realizing it, I had made far too much. So I pulled out my phone and messaged my mother. Half an hour later, I was standing outside her office building with a basket of breakfast. A low-profile black sedan pulled up beside me. I opened the door and climbed in. The next moment, I threw my arms around her. Mom, I missed you so much. Though she had visited me abroad now and then, I was a hopelessly devoted daughter. I wanted to cling to her every second. Proudly, I laid out the breakfast on her desk. You were always so rushed whenever you came to see me. This is the first time I've cooked for you. Try it. My mother's eyes crinkled with a smile as she picked up a dumpling. After one bite, her praise came warmly. Maria, you've grown up. Now you're taking care of your mother. Wonderful. I discreetly wiped my tears and made a vow to bring her breakfast every day. But that thought didn't last long. After leaving her car, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following me. Cautious, I asked the driver to take a detour. Sure enough, just before we reached Annie's villa, a white car that had shadowed us all the way finally turned back. Back at the house, I told Annie what happened and shared my suspicion. Do you think it could be Paul's men? Has he started suspecting my identity? Annie shook her head firmly, without hesitation. Impossible. I stared at her, surprised. Why are you so certain? Realizing her slip, she hurried to explain. If Paul knew you were alive, would he still visit your grave every year? When I stayed silent, she pulled me close and showed me her phone screen. Look, he's with Linda today, choosing wedding dresses. He's probably long moved on. Do you really think he has time to send people after you? On her screen was a photo of Paul and Linda, leaning close together, smiling brightly. They looked perfect for each other. I should have felt happy for them. But instead, something lodged in my chest, suffocating me. I turned away and forced a smile. That's good. I'm going back to catch up on sleep. I slept until 4 in the morning. Even after waking, I was sluggish, drained. I handled some tasks my mother had assigned me, then started breakfast. At some point, Annie wandered in. She hugged me from behind, her voice playful. Maria, I wish you were my wife. I laughed helplessly. Go wash up. Breakfast will be ready soon. Breakfast can't possibly be as sweet as you, she pouted before letting me go. At the table, I set a steaming bowl of wontons before her. She declared mysteriously, I won't eat for free. Later, we're going shopping. Pick whatever you want, I'll pay. I teased, rare to see you generous. Then I won't hold back. Yet even after strolling for a while, I lost all interest. Annie noticed and suggested, we don't have to shop. Let's get some drinks instead. Neither of us expected to run into Paul and Linda outside a cafe. Perhaps seeing me with Annie made Paul instinctively take 2 steps forward. His lips parted, but he never spoke the name. Instead, he turned to Annie. "Don't you think you should explain?" Annie calmly shielded me behind her, standing tall. "Explain what?" "You know what I mean." Paul cast me a fleeting glance, the meaning clear in his eyes. Feigning ignorance, Annie replied, "Then please, President Wilson, enlighten us." Paul's patience wore thin. His tone sharpened. "Tell me, why do they look so alike?" So Paul was suspicious after all. I glanced at Linda behind him, only to find her studying me in return. Her eyes carried curiosity, but also a flicker of resentment. I lowered my head, shame washing over me, as if I were an interloper in their love. Squeezing my hand, Annie spoke up with casual defiance. "Why? Haven't you heard the saying, finding solace in resemblance? Maria is gone. Am I not allowed to befriend someone who looks like her?" Paul's pupils trembled faintly at her words. Annie pressed on. "If I'm not mistaken, you and I have no ties anymore. Don't you think you're overstepping, President Wilson?" Paul clenched his fists, staring hard at my face. Only after a long silence did he finally look away. To my surprise, he didn't push further. Watching him and Linda leave one after another, a deeper unease settled in my heart. Should I have waited longer before coming back? I murmured. Annie knocked me lightly on the head, her face full of exasperation. "Are you stupid? This is your home. You come back when you want, why care about anyone else? You've already been driven away for 5 years because of their schemes. And after all that, you still didn't get what you wanted. Some people deserve the misery they create." I couldn't quite follow her meaning, but Annie refused to explain further. Instead, she tugged me into the cafe. "2 iced Americanos, please." Lately, I had been helping my mother with work. That was the purpose of my return, to stand at her side. But she still refused to let me appear in public. I knew why. She feared the nightmare from 5 years ago might repeat itself. Back then, after the violent crash, I had woken up just long enough to call her. She rushed to me, cradling my blood-soaked body, too terrified even to cry. It was the first time I had ever seen such despair on her face. Everyone dreams, as they grow, of one day repaying their parents' love. Yet I had only brought her years of grief. When I struggled through rehabilitation overseas, she often turned away to secretly wipe her tears. So in the later years, once my body allowed it, I trained myself in self-defense. Annie, ever loyal, joined me in those classes too. Now, whenever we had free time, she was eager to spar until we were both breathless and sprawled on the floor. One such evening, lying on her back, Annie suddenly spoke. "Paul and Linda's wedding has been postponed." I had been staring absently at the ceiling light, but that news made me sit up at once. "Why?" "They say Paul's mother fell ill." I grabbed Annie's hand. "Do me a favor." I ordered a bouquet of flowers and a basket of fruit, asking Annie to deliver them to Paul's mother. Meanwhile, I slipped quietly into my father's hospital ward. Through the window, I saw the man on the bed, tubes in every limb. His eyes were open, but he looked no different from a vegetable. In that moment, I didn't know how to feel. After wavering a while, I fled. I hadn't expected to run into Linda. But she seemed anything but surprised, as though she had been waiting for me. She smiled. "Let's talk." At the cafe, before I could sit down, Linda spoke impatiently. "Why did you come back? Wouldn't it be better to stay abroad?" I paused, then straightened, meeting her gaze. "That's my freedom. No one has the right to interfere." By now, there was no point in hiding my identity. If Linda could uncover it, Paul certainly could as well. Was she simply here to intimidate me? "You're right. I have no right to interfere." Linda gave a thin smile, ordered 2 lemon waters, and stared out the window, as if recalling something. After a long silence, she asked, "Do you remember the little drink shop outside our school?" I frowned, confused. Before I could reply, she continued. "You and Paul went there every day. I always sat right behind you. But neither of you ever noticed me. I couldn't accept it. Our families were equal. I was just as pretty as you, why was it that Paul only ever saw you?" In that moment, I swore to myself, whatever it took, I would have him. I pressed my lips together. "So, you've liked him since high school?" "No. Since even earlier. But feelings can't be forced. What do you know?" Her palm slammed the table, her features twisting with frustration. "If not for your sudden appearance, Paul and I would already be married. You ruined it. I hate you, Maria. Why did you come back now of all times? All my life, everything I wanted, I got. Paul will be no different, he will be mine." A weary sigh escaped me. "Believe me or not, but I never meant to destroy anything between you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be finding out only now." Linda snorted. "Doesn't matter. You'll never win against me." She left as abruptly as she had come, her words unfinished. I dialed Annie's number again and again, but she didn't answer. A chill ran through me as realization dawned. Linda's sudden appearance hadn't been a coincidence. It was as if she had deliberately lured me away. But why? If they wanted to strike, their target should have been me. Then I remembered, my half-sister Monica had aligned herself with Linda's brother. They were allies now, working from the same side. Perhaps the Perry family was backing Monica in her fight for inheritance. Without them, my mother would have crushed her long ago. Half an hour later, a call came from an unknown number. They had Annie. If I wanted to save her, I had to come alone. And if I dared call the police, they warned, Annie would die. Annie was dragged into this because of me. I had to rescue her. I considered asking my mother for help, but I knew she would never let me risk myself. I couldn't allow anything to happen to Annie. But as soon as I climbed into a car, someone blocked my way. My throat tightened when I saw who it was. Paul. He must have come in haste, just a white shirt, collar undone, no tie. He stood before my car, silently watching me. For a moment we simply stared. Then I opened the door and stepped out. Paul. The next second, I was in his arms. He buried his face in my neck, his voice breaking. You've finally admitted it's you. Wait, did that mean he had already known? I tried to push him back, to demand when exactly he had realized. Surely not that first night, when he had nearly ordered my face cut open. But before I could speak, Paul cupped my face, laughing and crying at once. Maria, I was never going to marry Linda. I don't love her, I've never been close to her. Everything I did was for revenge on your behalf. She's working with your sister Monica. That car accident 5 years ago? She was involved. I covered his mouth with my hand, silencing him. First we save Annie, all right? Or are you here to stop me? I stepped back, searching his eyes. His smile turned bitter. No. I came to go with you. His words startled me. In the car, Paul explained why they had settled for kidnapping Annie. From the moment you landed, 3 separate groups have been protecting you. They had no chance to get close. I frowned. Aside from my mother and Paul, who else? Annie's people, he clarified. Not that she ever expected them to target her. She was unprepared. It wasn't a lack of preparation, she was with me nearly 24 hours a day. Except for that half hour when Linda distracted me. In the end, it was my fault she was taken. Paul opposed the idea of trading myself for Annie. They only grabbed her to lure you out. If you go, they'll kill you without hesitation. The accident 5 years ago proved it, they never meant for you to live. A flash of murderous fury passed through his eyes. I lowered mine, sighing. But do we have another choice? If Annie dies, I won't survive either. Paul's fingers traced my face gently, anguish in his touch. Maria, what am I supposed to do with you? After much pleading, I promised him I wouldn't act recklessly. At last, he relented. You go in for the exchange. I'll be outside, waiting to strike. Soon the car pulled into an abandoned building. Masked men stopped us. I stepped out alone, led forward between 2 guards. Counting quickly, I estimated 5 lookouts outside. Including those inside, perhaps 7 or 8 in total. No guns. If Annie and I fought together, we might have a chance. Step by step, they brought me before the leader. He compared my face to the photo, then nodded. I shouted, "Release her." Annie, who had been slumped against a concrete pillar with her eyes closed, snapped awake at my voice. She glared at me furiously. "Who told you to come? Maria, are you stupid?" She gestured frantically with her eyes. But I met her gaze with calm silence. Something in my expression made her pause, then she turned her rage on the kidnappers. "You idiots! Do you even know who you've taken? I am Annie. If you dare touch a single hair on my head, my father will turn City A upside down." She wasn't exaggerating. Everyone knew her father lived for his family, ready to lavish his wife and daughter with endless protection. The kidnappers weren't fools either. They were here for money, not death. Better fewer complications than more. Just as they prepared to exchange me for Annie, she and I shared a look, and struck together. With a sweeping kick, Annie sent the man beside her crashing to the floor. I seized the chance to pull a knife hidden in my boot, slicing upward. The ropes on my wrist snapped apart. Only then did the kidnappers realize we were no ordinary victims. But by that time, Annie and I had already freed ourselves. Back to back, we faced the thugs circling in. Annie grinned. "Maria, for each. Finish them off, then let's go home for dinner." In truth, men who lived by crime weren't as easy to fight as we imagined. Annie was better than me in combat, so she shielded me again and again. Soon, blood streaked her arms, her shoulders. Watching her grit her teeth, my confidence faltered. Paul should have been here by now. But in that split second of distraction, Annie was kicked hard against the wall. When they raised a blade toward her, I didn't think, I threw myself over her body. Perhaps fate had always intended this end. All I had ever wanted was to live. Why was it so hard? As I closed my eyes, memories flickered past like a lantern reel. Me in a wheelchair, cradled by my mother's trembling arms. My Maria, please get better soon. I want to see you stand again. Annie sneaking into my bed at midnight with snacks, tugging me up to watch dramas. Maria, you're the best. No one else would ever keep me company. Paul, not long ago, red-eyed as he whispered, Maria, I cannot bear to lose you again. If something happens to you, I won't go on living. I owed them too much, my mother, Paul. I could only repay them in another life. But the pain never came. I opened my eyes slowly. Paul's face was above me. With shaking relief, he pulled me into his arms. Thank God I wasn't too late this time. Behind him, the police had arrived. The kidnappers were subdued. Tears burst from me. Paul, we did it. Yes, he murmured, holding me close. We did. From the side, Annie weakly raised an arm. Hey, does anyone care if I'm still alive? I wriggled free from Paul and rushed to her. Thankfully, her injuries were superficial. The doctor said she'd be home in a few days. Of course, by now, there was no hiding it from my mother. She came to the hospital. Annie, usually fearless, didn't even dare breathe too loudly. I poured a guilty glass of water, offering it to her. But she pulled me into the corridor and, rather than scolding, wrapped me in a firm embrace. My Maria is so brave. I'm proud of you. Mom. The word broke into a sob. I had been terrified, but I knew some things had to be faced. Even at great cost, I could not run away. So I wept into her arms, letting it all out. She held me silently until the storm inside me had calmed. At last, I lifted my head. Mom, you're not angry I risked myself? She wiped my tears, her face soft. I know your heart. Even if I wanted to stop you, I couldn't. And after what you've endured, I believe nothing can defeat you now. My eyes stung anew. I slapped my cheeks to steady myself, escorting her back to her car. Before leaving, she smiled. When Annie recovers, bring her home for dinner. And Paul too. I nodded, hard. Yes. 2 days later, Paul brought news. The kidnappers had confessed. The mastermind was Linda. Soon after, Linda herself was arrested. But then came the twist. To save herself, Linda revealed that Monica White had bribed the hitmen who caused my accident 5 years ago. At once, the two women turned on each other, each insisting on her own story. Police opened a swift investigation. My mother and Paul delivered evidence to the station. With Linda's testimony, Monica's guilt was undeniable. She would face the law's judgment. Linda's betrayal didn't absolve her either. And so, for now, the ordeal ended. Annie recovered quickly, and on her discharge day, Paul came to fetch us. To my surprise, Annie turned her sharp tongue on him. Well, President Wilson himself, taking time out of his busy day to pick us up. If I'm not mistaken, your darling fiancé is in prison now. You don't look the least bit worried. I tugged her sleeve in warning, but she ignored me. Maria, don't pity him. He knew Linda and Monica were colluding, yet still agreed to an engagement. That was your enemy, Paul, enemy. Whether his heart was true or false, he doesn't deserve you. Paul's knuckles bulged on the steering wheel, his face dark as stone. Finally, through gritted teeth, he spat, so. You do know how to burn the bridge after crossing it. In truth, between Annie's injury and the investigation, I had scarcely thought of love. But I could sense there were secrets between her and Paul. I ignored their tension, keeping my face stern. Tell me honestly. What have you two been hiding? Annie gave a strained laugh. Maria, why so fierce? What could I possibly hide from you? Oh. My dad's coming to get me today. You two go on without me. Come eat at my place in a few days. And with that, she bolted, vanishing. The hand at my side was suddenly held. I turned, and met Paul's eyes, brimming with wounded longing. Maria, I haven't. Later, Paul and I went to our old beach. The sea was calm, the waves small. Barefoot on soft sand, I felt the weight in my heart lift. Paul spoke for a long time. He told me he had known from the start that I lived. Visiting my grave each year had only been part of our ruse. He confessed it was Annie's idea for him to get close to Linda, to gather evidence and thwart her and Monica. All those years, while I hid abroad, Paul and Annie had shielded my mother and me. No wonder my mother wanted them at our table. But one thing still puzzled me. That night in the bar, why the cruel act? Because Linda's people were watching. And, because of a bet with Annie. A bet? His gaze softened. I bet you would recognize me. A smile trembled on my lips, though my eyes burned. But you lost. Paul's arms wrapped tight around my shoulders, his voice breaking. Maria, if it meant you were safe, winning or losing never mattered. When I said we were finished, all I wanted was to bring you back the next day. But you were at death's door. How you must have hurt, hearing those words. I can't forgive myself, how could you? I wiped my face again and again, trying to appear strong. But the more I fought the tears, the harder they fell. Paul, I never blamed you. Truly. I should thank you and Annie. Without you, I wouldn't have made it. Gently, Paul held me close. Maria, from now on, we'll always be together. Never apart again. Yes. Always together. Childhood sweethearts. Never betrayal. 3 days later was the White family banquet. Everyone I loved, and who loved me, was there. My mother cooked herself, filling the table with dishes. When we raised our glasses, her eyes were red. To Maria's long life. Annie and I exchanged a look, then laughed. Yes, to Maria and Auntie's long lives. Clinking glasses, we said in unison, may we all live long lives. 6 months passed. Linda and Monica's verdicts were delivered. My father's other children lost all claim to the family fortune. The White family's empire had been my mother's to begin with. My father had been penniless, and it was she and my grandfather who built the company from the ground up. Why should outsiders reap the reward? Over the past 5 years, she had steadily transferred shares into my name. We no longer had anything to fear. That same day was my wedding with Paul. Annie had promised to be my bridesmaid but backed out at the last moment. As Paul carried me into the car, she cried like a fool, shouting at him fiercely. So you won? What of it? Maria's just blinded by your sweet words. But hear me, if you ever make her suffer even a little, I'll take her away at once. Paul shot back, rest easy. You'll never get the chance. Ugh. Damn it, I'll steal Maria back yet, she sobbed. Afraid she'd upset me further, Paul quickly shut the door and told the driver to go. In the back seat, he gazed at me with blazing eyes. Excited and awestruck, he called out, wife. Lowering my head, I whispered back, husband. Tenderness filled his gaze. He clasped my hand solemnly. Wife, I'll treat you well. So well, you'll never doubt it. The car filled with a rosy haze of romance. Outside, a dragon of cars rolled on, carrying us toward happiness. Extra chapter. 8 months after Maria left, Paul went abroad alone. He had walked that path many times, so often he could find it with his eyes closed. Maria's injuries hadn't fully healed, especially her leg. Last time he came, her doctors said it would take at least 2 years before she could walk normally again. That meant she had to remain here for treatment. Paul hid behind the house, never daring to go close. Every visit, he watched only from afar. He knew better than anyone, Maria wouldn't want to be seen in her state. On that, Annie agreed. The last time the two of them came together, a quarrel had nearly exposed them. Since then, Paul had decided to come alone. That day, after a while, Maria tired and returned to her room with the nurse's help. Paul checked the time, hours until his flight. He wavered, then climbed the wall. Just one look. One last look, then he would go. Through the window, he saw her asleep. Scars still traced her face, pale pink and healing. He thought of how much Maria had once cherished her beauty. Now, nearly disfigured by a cruel accident, how she must have grieved. Each time, guilt consumed him. He cursed himself for the harsh words he'd spoken in their last call. If he had known it might be their last conversation, he would have said only one thing, Maria, I love you. His hand reached through the air, tracing her sleeping features from a distance. No matter what, in my eyes, you'll always be the most beautiful. After that, Paul flew overseas almost every month. Seeing Maria became part of his life. He knew he had to grow stronger, to protect the people he loved. Once, during a meeting, he learned Maria had taken her first steps. He burst into tears before all his employees, excusing himself afterward with a cough and a claim of illness. When the meeting ended, he ordered his assistant to book a flight immediately. Annie complained about his frequent visits, though Paul knew she meant no harm. A woman's heart was hard to read, but aside from Maria, he cared little for anyone else. At last, he warned her, if you're truly her friend, you should know, having one more person love her is no bad thing. Paul proposed they join forces. Let's root out those who want to hurt her. Together. Even after all this time, he could remember Annie's face, defeated, unwilling. It was then he realized Annie's feelings for Maria were not what he had thought. But what did it matter? As he said himself, having one more person love Maria was no bad thing. He was confident in winning, but he did not fear losing. So long as Maria was safe, nothing else mattered.